Hello and welcome to B2B Unveiled, taking you behind the curtain as to what and who makes up a top B2B agency. For my first episode, I couldn't think of anyone better than our lead copywriter, Chris Banner. He's been with Up B2B for 3 years now, and he's informally known in-house as the wordsman. Chris Banner.
Thanks for the introduction, Emmy. It's a delight to be here, talking about words and creative and B2B. So I'm really looking forward to chatting with you on this podcast.
Nice. Let's talk about your introduction into B2B. How did you get into that space, and or what even made you want to be a copywriter in the first place?
Well, I think I've always just I love solving problems, I think. So that's kind of where it all started from. And I guess initially why I wanted to be a copywriter was just when I was growing up, it was kind of seeing like some great ads and some clever. I guess maybe it's because I'm probably a bit of a smart ass, I think, in general. So I like solving problems in with a bit of a flourish and trying to do something clever and witty. Yeah. So I think if I saw something on TV and it made me laugh, or it felt really smart, I kind of thought, well,
any come to mind?
I guess the first one I remember seeing that kind of really turned me on to advertising was Honda and the cog advert where it sort of bounces across. And I remember just seeing that and being sort of wowed during the Coronation Street ad break. But then I still remember like all the jingles I used to hear on the radio, like driving up to my granddad's and past all the old billboards on the road and WKD ads and stuff. I remember seeing all that and thinking, that's what I'd like to do. So I think that's why I started wanting to be a copywriter. And then I guess my career, so I've been doing this for about just over 10 years now. I've worked in B2C, I've worked in sort of university marketing, I've worked in employer branding, and then B2B was just kind of, I guess, another interesting challenge. And I think if you compare it to, I guess, B2C and some of the other areas, that the challenges in B2B, I guess, are a lot more varied, I think, because there's more variety in terms of, you're selling like, I don't know, a Kit Kat versus selling a logistics solution or a transport solution or something, or to do with tech and finance. They've got really nuanced problems to solve. Yeah,
that's really interesting, the creative process that will be different between B2C and B2B. How do you tend to approach that? Because obviously I imagine your creative approach is very different.
I think it's probably quite similar, to be honest, because I think people have that distinction where you work in B2B, and B2B is more factual and we can't have as much fun and we can't be exciting. But I think you're talking to people at the end of the day, and I think that's the trap a lot.
I can't imagine you not having fun at work, Chris.
Well, I do try. I think if you're going to do a job or a campaign or projects of any kind, you might as well enjoy it.
Exactly.
So I think you might as well try and find some way to make it fun. And I guess I probably might go into this later on, but in my creative process, I kind of always begin with the question of what do we want to say and what does the audience want to hear. And if you can hit the sweet spot in between that, then you're in business, really, and I think that works.
Nice. Do you have any instances where you've had to adapt your approach for B2B? I know we talked about those differences and you said they are quite similar and your process is quite similar, but there must be some instances where you're like, oh, well, in a B2C setting, this is how I would come forward with this, whereas B2B.
Well, I think, I think mainly, there's budgets and channels are probably the two main differences, I would say, because when I worked in B2C, you're working mainly on like maybe outdoor or TV, whereas B2B is kind of targeting someone who's probably at work and at their desk. So it seems to be, it's obviously moved a lot more digital in recent years, and obviously we've moved into social and you get a lot less print nowadays. But I think the budget's been a bit smaller. Sometimes we still work with some big budgets, actually, some of our big clients. But I think when you've got that constraint of having to work with maybe a smaller budget, that it can, as long as it's up front in the brief and you're kind of thinking, right, how can I be creative enough with a limited budget to get a response? And that's quite a nice creative challenge to have, I think. Sometimes it's good to have loads of money, but I think when you see some stuff that's out in the world, having loads of money doesn't necessarily mean great creative, whereas having the right constraints can focus your mind a little bit, I think.
What do you think in the creative team? What do you think is needed for that sort of strong approach, specifically within the B2B sector? Who do you think makes up that strong team?
It makes up that team, I think it's a mixture of, because it's kind of there's that split between the creative team and the accounts team and each different roles, but I think that should kind of overlap and everyone works together at every point. But I'd say if I'm speaking from a creative perspective, I think it's just a passion for the big idea and
Yeah.
how, and understanding how having that clear and direct thought that runs through everything makes everyone's life easier. So I think if you can get that identified early on and it's in budget and it meets the strategy. So I think if the strategy and the creative, if the strategy is right early on and then the creative responds to that, then you've got the building blocks then, and everyone's life gets easier. So I think that would be my
Yeah, they
key
need to
point on that.
harmonise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think working together is
Yeah,
really key.
yeah. That's the thing about Up. The creativity and the passion for what you do is it's so obvious when you step in. And I think clients really see that when they come to Up. They see the sort of excitement in the room, and the creative team are so, and the accounts team obviously, but the creative team are so willing to get their teeth stuck in and to come up with something maybe a bit outside the box. So although it's the B2B sector, we're still super creative and we still like to push boundaries in those ways, which I think's brilliant. So how do you, again, we're going on the balance between the creativity and B2B, and I feel like that's quite an unfair question because, like you said, there is so much creativity that you can bring to the B2B sector, but how do you strike that balance of these weird wacky ideas but then these briefs where they're obviously looking for, they have a very specific sector and a very specific audience that they're trying to meet?
Well, I love an analogy.
Yeah, go on.
So I think how I often describe this is that if you have a very targeted brief or you need to do some really clear KPIs and potentially the client is, maybe seen as quite straight, as long as you can do something really creative, as long as you can sort of trace your way back to the brief.
Yeah.
So the way I kind of think of it is holding like a balloon, holding a helium balloon. So you've got your strategy and you've got your idea, and then you've got the little string that comes off and you've got your nice creative idea, and you need to be able to follow that string back to where you started. And then if you have a creative idea that's just been created for the sake of it, it's like you've let go of the balloon and it just becomes a bit crazy. So I say that quite a lot when I'm looking at creative work that doesn't quite seem to land, and you think, well, they've just let go of the balloon there and they've got a little bit carried away with their idea, whereas you still need to always be going back to who we're talking to, what's the brief, who's the client, does it work? Imagining if you're going to see this ad, fair enough, it's great to get it out there if you're doing something a bit bonkers, but will it make sense and will it work? Because there's no point doing something fancy that doesn't work, whereas you could do something that's really smart, might not be eccentric or wacky, but would still get results, and that's the satisfaction in that, I think.
Something that I learnt very quickly in Up is that their clients are very long-standing. Like, they really form that relationship, and because they form that relationship, Up know their audiences back to front, inside out, and they can always see where we're coming from. Because we know them so well, we can come out with these wacky ideas, but still know how it's going to resonate with their audiences, which is fantastic.
Which on that point, if I may, I'll build on that point.
Carry on, Chris.
I think you kind of earn the right, I guess, because if you kind of pitch into someone cold and you do with a wacky idea and you think, okay, there's always the opportunity the client will come back and say, you just don't understand my brand, you don't understand my audience, you didn't understand the brief. But when you've worked with someone for 5, 10, 15 years, or maybe just like 2 or 3 years, but you've had really good results, then the comment shouldn't come back that you don't understand me, because I have proven that I understand you. And if I'm presenting you to 3 routes, maybe route 1 shows that I really do understand you. So route 3 works in the same world. It might just do it in a more fun way, which you kind of want to push people to do something a bit more braver, I think, because that's what we're here for, I think.
Do you have some of your favourite brave ideas? Some campaigns that you've really enjoyed?
Yeah, we did a really nice campaign for Vita Foods Europe, I think it was last year, which was all about how the visitors to Vita Foods Europe really love visiting there, and the environment, and how it's such a great place to be. And I think we've found a really clever way of using sort of their existing photography assets to really create like a really dynamic and powerful set of visuals, which are all centered around sort of peering through like really big words like, inspiring and dynamic and vibrant. It really painted a picture of what it's like to be at the event, but in a really clever and impactful way. That we had lots of clean layouts, really impactful, I think, on a social feed, and just I think it was a really interesting solution to quite a challenging brief, because we do these every year in multiple shows, and it's finding new ways to kind of really sell in an event. And I just really thought that was really effective, and the client really liked it, and I think it did really well. So that ticks all the boxes for me, I think.
Nice. I think everyone and their mum talks about AI and how that's affecting marketing at the moment. But I am going to ask, because I feel like with the rise, I know it's not the same. It's not the same as getting a copywriter in, but is there anything that's being developed, or are there any trends that you see that's going to change the copywriting scene?
Well, I mean, it's interesting again. Obviously, I presume this would come up at some point because AI is just a big issue at the minute. I think.
Issue?
A potential issue, yeah. Well, I think because we've got, it's always what the next big thing's going to be, and it feels a little bit like the metaverse and NFTs were all the huge thing like 2 or 3 years ago, and they seem to have slid away now.
Yeah.
And then you kind of see in Cannes award-winning work, everyone kind of jumps on that. And then sort of last year, you saw a lot of Mid-Journey and AI generated, and how can we use that? I think it is going to influence the way we work, but I think it's almost like, the way I was thinking about it, is that we used to have doing scamps, and then photography, and then we kind of got scamps then into stock photos and Photoshop and getting mock-ups. So it's almost like this is the next step now. So it's almost like we've got photos, Photoshop, and then AI in terms of, the visual generative AI. And in terms of copy, I mean, it can write to a degree, but then, everyone can write. So it being able to mirror, I guess, or mimic a copywriter writing or a person writing, it's fine. Can it mimic a good copywriter writing? And then can it mimic, a really creative copywriter? I think we're quite some way off that. I could be wrong, but I think we're reasonably far off on that.
This is my hot take. I feel like with especially ChatGPT and stuff like that, I think it is highlighting the need for copywriters, because they're having these machines come forward and they're writing, like you say, you can tell it to make ad copy for X, Y, and Z, and they're producing stuff and it's just not that good. And it shows the skill that copywriting really, really requires. And hopefully it's not going to be taking over anytime soon, because I feel like it is a real skill, and I don't think it's appreciated when there's people coming forward saying, oh, AI, just get it to write this, and then you read it and it's just...
Yeah, I mean, I think...
It's not the same.
Because a lot of the thing is, like, I mean, when you're working creative, you get a lot of people saying, anyone can write and anyone can have an idea.
Go on then.
But that's true, because I think when you go to uni and you learn to be a creative or you learn to be a writer, you don't necessarily, no one teaches you how to have ideas, because everyone can have ideas.
Yeah.
It's spotting which ones are the good ideas, and then going through that feedback process of presenting your work, being told why something doesn't work, why something does work, because it's kind of intangible at times about why one idea works better than another. Because, you've got so many variables about how an audience is going to look at it, where they're going to look at it, how they think, how you think, how it's written, how it's presented. And I think the levels of analysis, I guess, to kind of capture that, AI's generated 50 ideas in 10 seconds. How do we know which one of these ideas is good? You're still going to need someone to filter and then someone to fix, which is, I guess, like a creative director's job for a copywriter. So I guess maybe that's where we might head to, that it might be like you'd work with an AI and then I would, tidy it up or say, oh, that doesn't work, or that's a good idea. I mean, I think one way I sort of read about how people have been using AI, which I found quite useful myself, is to see what's happening in the sector. So if you ask AI to generate you I'm trying to think of about like a logistics campaign, and it comes back with 10 slogans and 10 thoughts or 10 headlines you could use, you shouldn't really use any of them headlines, because they're already out in the market, and it's almost like a big red flag that this is out there. So if you're going to try and say something unique and individual, ChatGPT shouldn't be coming back to it as soon as you type in the question.
Do the opposite.
Yeah, find an interesting answer rather than any answer.
The one that the AI is going to shove out. The premise of this podcast is essentially about my journey into Up, and about the people that make Up. Wow, okay. That make up the team. And I just wanted your opinion, because you've been with Up for how long now?
Just over about 2.5 years, I think, now.
Yeah, and I feel like, for me, what really excites me is, again, I know I do keep saying it, but it is so poignant that people are so passionate about what they do. What is it about Up that really pulls you in?
Oh, it's a tricky. I think it's I think what I look for in an agency is somewhere where I have all the kind of tools and environment to do great creative work. That's kind of what I want to do. So if I've got, like, a look at the team at Up, we've got really good strategy, we've got really good accounts people, we've got really good designers, we've got a good creative team. Hope I'm not really missing any department out here, but it kind of feels like all the people and the ingredients are kind of there, and you can ask and help each other. So I guess, like, if I ever want to ask a question on the brief or challenge the brief, I feel like I can, and I welcome an account handler challenging me on my copy about whether it's on brief or not, because I mean that's always been something I've always said about, like, a strength in a creative. I guess anyone just in marketing at all is a willingness to be wrong. I think is really important, because
is that your top tip for going into?
Well, it could be, actually, because I mean I didn't think about it that much, but I think a willingness to be wrong does just mean that you are always open to someone saying, could we do this better?
Yeah.
Is there another way of doing it? I don't quite think that works, because if you're showing someone your idea and one person says, oh, it makes me think of that, fair enough, it's not a big sample, but if they've thought that, someone else might do it. So you need to be receptive to that and then actually give it the consideration about whether it is something to act on or not. Doesn't mean you always have to be wrong, and you can stand and you can fight if you believe you're right about, you've got a great idea. But I think being able to just think and stop and go, actually, maybe I'm not, Lord Almighty and everything I say is right and my creative is the greatest thing in the world and I will not be challenged, because we're all experts and we've got all this mix of perspectives and ideas and expertise, and what's the client going to think? Does it align with the strategy? Is it creative enough? Is someone going to fall asleep reading it? How long is that, Chris? Can we have a shorter headline, please? All that kind of stuff. And I think that's a real strength that I think a lot of the team have got it up, to be honest. I think it's really, really good, solid, friendly team where everyone is willing to help out and support one another.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit corny, but I think that is true.
No, it's true though. As much as it might sound cliche, I feel like we are all there to support one another, and it does feel like our strength comes from all of us willing to listen, like you said, and willing to challenge each other, but in a productive way.
Yeah, definitely.
So the reoccurring question on the podcast, which hopefully we'll get all of our guests to answer, is if you could unveil one golden nugget of advice or a secret sauce for a successful B2B marketing team, what would it be?
It would be, dun dun dun, I think it would be making time for each other. I think that's, because I think we work in a business where we're all under varying degrees of time pressure, and I guess when we're sort of selling work, we're selling time as a service business, and we're selling something that looks like, you see a headline and the consumer thinks, oh, they've spent a lot of time doing that, whether we've done it really quickly and it's been really smart. But I think it's all about trying to find time in between the briefing and the delivery of a project. So if you can get your bit done faster, or you can help the creative team get something earlier, or you can spend a bit more time on strategy that would then make the creative process easier, or you can get strategy done really quickly and give more. I think it's managing time across the whole process, and then I guess obviously trying to help each other and just trying to make that time for each other. I think the more strategy, the more creative, the more accounts, the more expertise you can get on a project, the better the result. So I think if you can, easier said than done, because it's always about trying to squeeze as much time out as we can, but I think if you can make time out of what you have available, I think that just ends up always being a better result.
Absolutely. So obviously you've been doing copywriting for far longer than 3 years, but the 3 years in at B2B. What advice would you give to people wanting to get into the B2B space, and specifically in the copywriting sector of the B2B space?
I think first of all, I'd say that just right off the bat that B2B doesn't have to be boring. And I think, it isn't all facts and figures. It definitely not. I think if you want to be creative, to not want to work in B2B is just, I don't understand why you would. I think you can get some really great opportunities. So I'd say first off, be open to it, have a good look, be intrigued by the different challenges you can find in B2B. There's loads of courses out there, I guess, for aspiring creatives, like School of Thought's one that I took part in. Actually won it as well, which is very nice. So I think that's something you could get involved with. I guess just getting in touch with agencies, like you can message me, message the team at Up, and you'll always get someone it's amazing how much time I think that creatives generally and copywriters have for juniors coming through. If you ask, you kind of think sometimes that, oh, there's going to be this, they won't have time for me. And I guess, but I always try and make time and try and speak to people and offer just a little bit of advice, because it's hard. It is hard getting into it. But when you do get in, you know, you can do some great work and you can have a really good career. It's just, I think, keeping at it as well, I guess, because it can be really hard to get in, get over the line, get placements, you know. I think it's a lot, kind of a bit easier than it was probably in my day, where it was a lot of unpaid placements. Nowadays, it's kind of, you get a bit of pay and you get expenses and you can learn off people. But I think it's just plugging away, asking for help, looking for courses, keeping an eye on sort of award annuals, trying to enter any awards that you can, looking at student awards, D&AD talks. There's lots of support out there. I guess you just need to kind of look and just picking up the phone and speaking to an agency, I think.
Thank you, Chris. That was absolutely brilliant. What a great way to start the podcast. Our first episode, absolutely fabulous. So all I can say now is hopefully see you next month, where we'll be unveiling more B2B secrets. But for now, follow us on social. Thank you.